Everyone, welcome. On behalf of the National Transit Institute, I thank you for participating in the NTD Safety and Security Non-Rail Mode Reporting webinar. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transit industry in the United States. We are pleased to have Ann Singleton, James Overbeek, and Stephen Bisulka as our presenters. Ann Singleton is a Senior Safety and Security Analyst for the NTD program since 2009. Ann has been involved with several FTA initiatives, such as the State Safety Oversight Program, the Commuter Rail Safety Study, and the Transit Bus Safety and Security Program in a variety of roles. Prior to Ann's work with FTA, she was a software instructor and database developer. James Overbeek joined the NTD team in 2015. He is a graduate of the Randolph-Macon College and currently works as a validation analyst for the Safety and Security module of the National Transit Database. Stephen Bisulka joined the NTD team in January 2018. He is a graduate of James Madison University and is a validation analyst for the Safety and Security module of the National Transit Database, recently making the transition from the annual module. Today's webinar consists of Ann and James presenting the material, followed by a question and answer session at the end, and also throughout the presentations a longer one than sometimes our non-NTD ones. So I'm pretty sure there's questions, stopping for questions throughout. You can participate in the discussion and ask a question by using the chat pod that is located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Stephen and I will be monitoring the chat during the presentation, and any questions that Stephen can't help you with or scrolls up on by will be saved, and we can address them when we break for questions or stop at the end. If you haven't already printed out a copy of the presentation that was emailed to you, you can click on the handout document in the upper left-hand corner of your screen under the heading Handouts, or you can copy and paste one of the two links provided in the notes box. Those are not clickable, so don't try to click on them. You're going to have to copy and paste and put in your browser that way. Without any further ado, I will now turn the presentation over to Ann.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to point out quickly, Lori, that several people are saying they don't have sound now, where apparently they did a moment ago.
Okay.
Not sure.
I can try to help them, but sometimes it's an IT person on their end needs to do it. They can chat. They can type in the chat, and I can try to help. But it is what it is. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm going to continue then. All right. So the goal of today's session is to familiarize NTD reporters with the safety and security reporting requirements and the individual reporting forms. We hope that the knowledge you gain today will make your job easier, and we sincerely appreciate your commitment to safety and security reporting. For those of you that report for purchased transportation providers, also known as PT operations in the system, please share this presentation with them so that they too are aware of what you need to report to NTD. So today we'll show you how to access the NTD system and navigate through the menus and forms. We'll discuss how setup is achieved. We'll review the Safety and Security CEO Certification form, the S&S-20 Security Configuration forms. We'll review the 2018 reporting clarifications and the one form change. Also reporting on the S&S-50 non-major summary report forms and the S&S-40 major event reporting forms. As Lori mentioned, James and I are your instructors for today, with Stephen handling the chat box questions for us. Maggie Schilling, NTD Program Manager, and Joseph Eldridge, our NTD Project Manager, will not be joining us today. Our contact data is provided here, so if you'd like, you can certainly jot that down. If you do not know who your analyst is, it is displayed within the NTD system itself. When you're on you'll see that we're going to show you in a little bit. It's on the summary view. Or, of course, you can call any of us to find out who your analyst is. We'll also be providing this information at the end of the presentation. So for now, I'm going to turn this over to James to get us started.
Thank you, Ann. In 1974, Congress established the National Transit Database program as a means to collect information and statistics on transit systems in the United States. The first data was collected in 1979 with paper reports. Since then, NTD has evolved into the nation's primary source of information and statistics on transit systems. All modes of transportation are included in NTD data collection. Agencies that are recipients or beneficiaries of Urbanized Area Formula Program Funds 5307 and 5311 are required to report data with some exceptions. Both public and private providers are encouraged to voluntarily report, as this will increase federal allocation that the urbanized area receives. All reporters designated as full reporters are required to report monthly safety and security events meeting a threshold. Agencies designated as small systems or rural tribal report safety and security data on an annual basis. Agencies who have requested a reporting waiver due to a significant natural disaster are not required to report for the period of the waiver. The data reported to NTD is used to provide industry performance reports to Congress and other federal agencies and departments, and is used to factor federal funding allocations for the UZAs, which was over $8 billion last year. The data is also used to direct, support, and improve other FTA program initiatives such as State Safety Oversight Program. The data is also used to generate analysis of trends in transit safety and security. The safety and security data is published monthly. This data is viewed by federal and state agencies, transit systems, media, or any interested parties. Published data can be found on the NTD website under the NTD data link. There are two products, Safety and Security Time Series data and the Safety and Security Time Major Only Series data. Your username is your email address in all lowercase letters. The agency's user manager establishes a person's user role in the system. The user manager is also the point of contact if you need to have your user role changed. There are 6 access levels for NTD reporting. The CEO, CEO delegate, and the NTD contacts have the highest level of access and full functionality to include the NTD annual forms, monthly ridership, and safety and security data. The main difference between the two CEO access and the NTD contacts is that the CEOs and the CEO delegate can submit the agency's certification forms. NTD editors, shown only as editors, are next, and they can edit all annual forms and can submit monthly ridership and safety and security forms. The safety contact can create, edit, delete, save, and submit S&S forms only. Safety editor can create, edit, and save, but not submit safety data, and viewers can only view the data. None of the safety contacts can change annual or ridership data. A person must be uniquely identified in only one role. The designated contacts are responsible for reporting data accurately and responding to questions about submitted data. The designated safety and NTD contact will receive any automated late notices and monthly reminders. The last modified user will receive reports or forms that are returned for questions or changes. Users can change the password as often as they like, but the system requires a new password every 60 days. Passwords must be at least 12 to 20 characters comprised of at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, one number, and/or special character. If a user ID has not been used for 60 days, the system will lock that user ID. If you do get locked out, click on the Reset Password link located beneath where you enter your login. If you forget your password and you are not logged out, you will see a forgot password link instead of a reset password link. On March 18, 2016, FTA launched a new website which contains the link to NTD data. This is a snapshot of the NTD page on the FTA website. Please notice the link to the NTD reporting tool. Also, on the left you will notice several links which are to be reviewed next. The NTD homepage contains a variety of links and resources. The About the NTD section contains an overview of the NTD program, contact information, and help desk contact information. The NTD data section provides access to historical and current annual data, monthly ridership data, and safety and security time series files, which contain statistical information on reported NTD events over the course of many years. Agencies often refer to this file for peer comparison. Under Reference Materials, you will find the NTD glossary, policy manuals, internet reporting, and quick reference guides, information on training and conferences, presentations and webinars, and an explanation of all the forms used in NTD reporting. When you click on the Report Tool link, the first screen that appears is depicted here on the left. Once you click on Agree to the disclaimer, the boxes for you to enter your username and password are presented. Your username is your business email address in all lowercase. Here you see the rest, reset password or forgot password link as well. Once you complete the login, this is a snapshot of the first screen you will see. You will notice there are menu options in the blue bar across the top. The default screen you just saw was the News menu option. Here you will find a variety of announcements and items of interest. The next menu item is the Task menu, which shows you how many tasks are in your queue. Tasks are things that you may need to complete or do. For example, one of the tasks you may have is to manage any pending or incomplete S&S reports. The Records menu item is where you will go most of the time. This is where you would go to select the safety reporting package. The Reports tab will display reports that are available to you. One such report would be the Historical Lookup Report to view safety and security data reported in prior years. In 2017, we launched a new report named The Rate Compared to Industry Rate Report, which will compare your agency incident, injury, and fatality rate against the industry average. And finally, the Action menu item is used to add new users in addition to other user actions. This concludes the menu options. As I mentioned, the Records tab is what safety and security reporters will access most of the time. To report safety and security data, click on the NTD Safety Packages link. When you click on the NTD Safety Packages link, you will have access to two reporting packages. Currently, you see a package for 2017 and 2018. On January 1st, 2019, you will see one package for 2018 and one for 2019. The 2017 package will be closed. The safety packages give you access to all safety and security reporting forms. The S&S-20 CEO Certification form, the S&S-30 Security Configuration form to report security personnel, access to create and edit any S&S-40 major event reports, and the S&S-50 non-major summary report forms for each month thus far in the year. The safety and security analysts review each report submitted for accuracy. The analyst will contact the NTD reporter via phone or email for questions. late or incomplete reports, questionable data, missing reports based on event notifications we may have, or for special analysis we conduct during the year. The various forms and reports have deadlines. The S&S-50s are due on the last day of each month for the previous month's data, except for commuter rail mode. For example, the October report is due November 30th. The NTD system sends automated email reminders on the 20th of each month. This is not a late notice, just a reminder to report. The NTD system also sends automated late emails on the 1st and 5th of each month. Please note that a report that has been created and saved but not submitted is considered late. When late notices are sent, it is quite common for analysts to receive calls from the reporters saying they know they completed their report. This is often true, but if there is no submit date, the system generates the late notice. So if you get a late notice, please check to be sure the report is completed and submitted. On the 15th, if data is still outstanding, FTA initiates delinquent reporter process and adds the agency to FTA's failure to report list. At this point, the S&S analyst will contact you to determine if there are extenuating circumstances why the report cannot be submitted. Failure to report required data can have severe consequences, such as withholding the agency's grant funds. A failure to report can be submitted by an analyst to FTA if an agency does not submit their S&S-50s, the year-end CEO certification is 45 days late, overall delinquent reports, has incomplete S&S-40s that do not comply with reporting requirements, or fails to respond to validation inquiries. Are there any questions to anything we have covered thus far? Okay. All right. Well,
Oh, James Todd Jennings has a question.
Okay.
It says, just to confirm, 5311 systems not designated as full reporters will only report annually?
Yeah, any small systems reporters or rural reporters will complete safety and security issues annually, not with the guidelines we just presented.
And there's also a question from Anthony Maggiore. I hope that's close. My agency has always been reporting as a full reporter. However, we are a UZA under 2000K. How could I verify we can use the reduced reporting forms?
In that case, Anthony, you'll have to speak with your actual agency's annual or urban analyst. That's something that you would have to discuss with them.
Okay, I just want to mention that if more questions come in as we're moving ahead, I will keep track of them, or maybe Stephen will, or Ann will be able to answer them if they're not speaking. So.
I just wanted to mention that I did see that, I was trying to find it again, that Lori Lorman asked or said that she used to get reminders, reminder emails, but she no longer is. I'd have to see, Lori, what your user status is in the system to see if those are coming to you or not. And if you are either the safety contact or the NTD contact, then we can try and look into why that you may not be getting those. If you contact me afterwards so that I can look up your ID and look up your profile, then we can try and resolve that issue.
Looks like Lori's typing. Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
All right, perfect. First, we will now review safety and security setup. Safety and security packages are automatically generated at the beginning of a new calendar year or based on the agency's submitted annual kickoff report. Modes and type of service available in the safety module are determined by the agency's P20 profile form. If you see any changes to the modes or types of service than you expect, contact the person in your agency who submits the annual reporting data. If you do not know who that is, contact your validation analyst and we will look into it. Please do not attempt to modify the P20 profile, as changes made here can affect all aspects of reporting and cause modal data to be deleted. To access your reporting form, as a reminder, you click on Records, then NTD Safety Packages, and choose the year in which you want to report data. When you complete those steps, the Safety Summary view displays. You see a confirmation of the reporting year, your agency's ID number and name, your validation analyst name and email address, and your agency's fiscal year information. Below that, you see the form name filter box and all the forms that are available. In the table, you can sort by any of the columns presented to help in locating the form you wish. You can also use the browser's Find feature by doing Control F and enter the number of the major report you may be looking for. However, for that to work, you must be on the appropriate page to find it. Remember, you cannot open any of these forms on this or reports on this screen. You must first click on NTD Safety Forms button located in the upper right of the screen. The NTD Safety Forms button is used to access the dashboard where you can create a new report, edit, or review an existing report. Again, a button to create major events is displayed. You can use the filter box here as well to restrict the view of the types of forms you want to see. Also, you can sort the columns as we already outlined on the summary view. To open the form, click on the form name displayed in the blue hyperlink. When you're finished with the dashboard, you want to remember to click on Close, or the system will create a task for you to close the dashboard. This is a snapshot of the dashboard. It looks similar to the safety summary view, but note the blue hyperlink titles. Again, to open a report or form, you'll want to click on those blue hyperlink titles. That concludes the navigation. Let's move on to the S&S-20 Safety and Security CEO Certification form. The S&S-20 CEO Certification form, the CEO or his or her designee to attestation to the accuracy of the major and non-major safety and security data for the previous calendar year. The form becomes available in January in the previous year's safety package when the new year's package launches. The form automatically calculates data from submitted reports for the year. However, unsubmitted data is not included. The form is due by the end of February of the following year, and only a person logged in as the CEO or CEO delegate can submit this form. Data reporters or the CEO should review their data to ensure it matches to the data in the S&S-20. Also, you can check that all safety data reports are submitted. Unsubmitted data is not included. You may add or delete S&S-40s or edit S&S-50 data, and the S&S-20 will automatically recalculate the numbers. Agencies should also use any in-house reports available to help verify the data. Click the confirm boxes adjacent to the data, then the CEO can click on Submit. Once the form is submitted, it cannot be resubmitted, but please understand that an added or deleted data report will automatically be recalculated in the form. This is a snapshot of the S&S-20 CEO Certification form. Please notice that the CEO name and title shown in this screenshot is of our test database and does not reflect actual data reported by an agency. That concludes the S&S-20 data. The S&S-30 Security Configuration Form collects the number and type of security personnel employed or contracted by your agency. The S&S-30 form is completed once at the beginning of the calendar year, and you are not required to update this form during the year unless your analyst has questions regarding the information provided. All S&S-30s must be completed and submitted to enable reporting. If you cannot create or edit an S&S-40 or 50, it's because one or more S&S-30s is not submitted. This is a snapshot of the S&S-30 Security Configuration Form. Again, this does not represent actual data for the agencies shown. Notice you have a place to enter the primary number of security personnel and the total number of security personnel, which is the primary and secondary added together. Do not leave either of these boxes blank. Below is a list of 7 types for security personnel with 2 columns to identify the type as primary or secondary. The primary security force is the one that routinely responds to events in or on transit property and is assigned to patrol agency property. For the use of local police non-contracted, report a count of 0. The secondary security force is the one or ones that occasionally respond or respond when primary force requires assistance. Again, for the use of local police non-contracted, use a count of 0. The number of personnel is reported in full-time equivalent hours. So one full-time equivalent equals one person working a 40-hour week, or 2,080 hours per year. Prorate the number of personnel if the person works only part-time providing transit security, or they provide security for more than one mode. One S&S-30 is completed for each mode. Be careful not to double count personnel. Totaling line 2 from each S&S-30 form should equal the total number of personnel. For example, if you have an MBPT mode, the total number is 1.5. LRDO mode, the total number is 3. And for DRDO mode, the total number is 0.5. This means that the total security force for the agency would be 5 full-time equivalency. If your security force covers multiple modes, you may use any reasonable method for determining full-time equivalent. That may be modal ridership or the number of employees covering a mode. If an agency contracts for security and pays a monthly fee based on services used, they should determine FTE based on the previous year's total hours worked. NTD allows for only one primary personnel type. If your agency has more than one type of security personnel it considers its primary, report the security force with the largest number of personnel as the primary and the smaller force as secondary. For further information on the S&S-30, please see the Safety and Security Policy Manual or Safety and Security Internet Reporting Manual on the NTD website or ask your analyst for assistance. This concludes review of the S&S-30 form. We do have a few changes that were made at the beginning of 2018. The 2018 changes are in bold. The definition of a reportable event has been expanded to include events occurring on transit infrastructure and events that involve transit-related maintenance activities that may not be on transit property. Historically, we have collected events in the rail yard and maintenance injuries, but this was not defined in the wording of a reportable event. The clarification also expands on the types of events that are not to be reported. Specifically, you see that this includes events that occur off transit property where persons, vehicles, or objects come to rest on transit property after the event. We will provide some examples as we go through the presentation. The evacuation description has been clarified to ensure that self-evacuations are also to be due to a life safety situation or an evacuation to the right-of-way. This is a low-impact change. While previous guidance did not limit self-evacuations to a life safety situation or an evacuation to the right-of-way, we found there was only one instance where this was not the case. You may have already noticed that the suicide checkbox on the injury form has been changed to read attempted suicide. Now we'll look at non-major S&S-20 reporting. The definition of a reportable event is a safety or security event occurring on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a maintenance facility, during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle. These safety events must meet the single injury only threshold and are related to falls, electric shock, etc. Multiple injury incidents are bumped up to major report. The S&S-20 form also collects the number of non-major fires where there was not an evacuation, injuries, fatalities, or substantial damage, but that still required suppression. Some exclusion most applicable to the non-major events are events occurring at bus stops or shelters, not on transit-controlled property unless boarding or lighting, and OSHA events occurring in administrative buildings. A complete list is included in the table shown earlier. The form is automatically generated for each mode and type of service at the beginning of each month. This form is required to be completed even if there was a major event for the month, as they capture different event types, and even if there is no data to report for the month. To recap, for submitting other safety events, you are entering the number of occurrences and the matching number of injured parties. Remember that injured means that they were transported away from the scene for medical attention, regardless of whether they appear injured or not. Do not include people who were transported away from the scene. Do not include people who were not transported away from the scene for medical attention. Here are several examples of injuries reported on the S&S-20. A passenger was thrown out of a seat due to a bus maneuver and transported. Improper wheelchair securement and the rider is injured. Transit vehicle door closing on an arm, leg, backpack, or clothing, and the person is transported. A person walking into the side of a stopped vehicle and is injured. Notice this is considered a fall, not a collision, because the vehicle is stopped. This is a snapshot of the S&S-20 monthly summary report form. Two of the categories for injuries on the S&S-20 form relate to securement issues. Securement issues are those related to an injury resulting from improper securement of a mobility device, such as a wheelchair or scooter. So they are reported as other in-vehicle securement issue. The other categories for other in-vehicle, not a securement issue. These are trips, slips while on the vehicle, or for being thrown from a seat during a vehicle maneuver. If no events occurred for a mode and month, open the appropriate S&S-20 form and choose the checkbox adjacent to No Data to Report. Then save and submit the report. Remember, do not include injuries to collision or any other major event type. If you provide door-to-door service, then safety events occurring between the door of the building to the door of the vehicle are reportable. Again, reports are due at the end of the following month and must be completed and submitted by the due date to avoid an automatic late notice. The S&S-20 can be modified at any time. Some reporters like to enter events as they occur during the month. For these reporters, they can modify the form and save and close the form after each change. Your validation analyst reviews each report for accuracy. If we have any questions, we may return the report to you, call or email you with our concern. If the return feature is used, the user ID under the last modified user column will receive the email. This is a snapshot of the S&S-20 monthly summary report with an analyst comment or question. So not only do you receive an email with the issue, but when you open the report, you will be able to see our question or concern there as well. That completes the S&S-40 questions, the S&S-20 form. Do we have any questions before we move on?
Doesn't look like anyone's typing, so it's up to you.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions, I will now... All right, hold on. I'll wait 1 second.
Bram Weiser is typing. Nope, maybe he's chatting to somebody else. Oh, there's a question from Letitia Raming. A passenger fell when getting off the bus. She said it was a... She said she was fine. Passenger fell... Whoa, it's rolling. I can't read it. Passenger fell when getting off the bus. Is it reportable?
Letitia, no, Letitia, if that passenger fell when getting off the bus and they were not transported for injury, it will not be reportable. These are single injury events, and by our definition of injury, they must be transported from the scene.
And Bram says, someone running into the side of a vehicle gets classified as revenue facility other? Question mark.
But I made an assumption there, so I apologize.
Bram, it should be revenue vehicle.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Is Ann talking? 'Cause I can't hear you, Ann. Barely.
I don't know why you can't hear me all of a sudden.
Oh,
Can you hear me
that's
now?
better. It was really low. It was weird.
Okay,
Yep,
well,
that's better.
no, Bram was referring to a question I had answered for Emmanuel. And I made an assumption there that the bus was standing at a bus stop when the person ran into the side of it. That's why I said the location would be revenue facility other. But obviously, if the person ran into the side of the bus when the bus was not moving, which is reported, and she was injured, he or she was injured, yes, that goes on the S&S-50 still. The person type is still other, but in that case, we'd have to just say, put that under the other section. It's down at the bottom right below before you get to the fire section, or as it were, right beneath where you get to the fire section for the rail reporting forms. So I hope that was somewhat clear. If it's not, please feel free to contact me afterwards.
Steve and
Steve. Go ahead, James.
Both of those, because they're conditions that they've had before, those will not be reported to NTD.
You're answering the future question, or James?
Yeah.
Are we talking about Christina's question, James?
No, I think we're on
No,
Steve Bethel's
Steve
question.
Bethel asking about a seizure, and Chris Anderson was also asking about health events such as seizures.
Okay, I see.
And then the collision resulting in a way is
Ooh,
reported.
there's a weird noise.
Cassidy, yes, all must be transported from the scene or they're not reported. Christina, let's see.
Do you want me, would it help if I just read
in
them? That way everyone would know what the question is?
That's fine.
Do it that way.
Yeah, so Christina asked if a collision results in a towaway but no transport, is it NTD reportable? We're going to talk about this here shortly under the major events where collisions are reported. But yes, towaway is an automatic threshold.
Letitia says, bus stopped at a light and truck hit the bus passenger side mirror and didn't stop. Is this reportable?
Bus stopped at a light and hit the bus it could be reportable if it meets a threshold, which we'll talk about on the S&S-40s. Remember, collisions are reported on the S&S-40 major event. So we'll answer that shortly.
It looks like Emmanuel was talking to Anne, a previous conversation.
Yeah,
there.
we were chatting earlier. Emmanuel, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but again, if the bus is stopped at a traffic light or someplace other than a bus stop, and of course they're transported, then yes, still it is reportable. It would just go under other, the other location on the S&S-50 form. And if you can't hear me, I guess we'll just have to type it out and you can give me a call, or I guess you can see it in the transcript, so you can call me back and we can discuss it more carefully later.
Renee Norris says if a person gets,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Anne.
Renee, yeah, I see it. If a person gets sick, that's the same kind of thing. Medical issues are not reportable. Now, unless it's a medical issue and it caused them to injure themselves. In other words, they were sick, flu, whatever the case may be, and they fell down the stairs and now they've injured themselves. Well, in that case, you're reporting the injury, not the fact that they were sick. So anybody that's having a baby, they're sick, they're having a stroke, a heart attack, a seizure, any kind of, or they're just intoxicated, and they're transported just because they're intoxicated, not because they're injured, they are not reportable.
It looks like Victoria Tang has, oh, she's writing to Cassidy. So Victoria and Cassidy, you guys connect.
I see Victoria. Okay, I guess that wasn't. You're right. They're talking to each other. Okay.
All right.
I think we can go on.
All right, perfect. So with that completed, I'm now going to turn this over to Anne.
Thanks, James. Okay, so let's take a look at the major event reporting, and I've adjusted my microphone, so I hope everyone can hear me well. So let's first go into more detail about the applicability and the reporting thresholds for S&S-40s. The definition, as James mentioned, has been changed, or clarified rather, in 2018. A reportable event, again, is a safety or security event occurring on the transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a transit maintenance facility or rail yard. Of course, that's not applicable here, but or during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle. Now, I'm not going to read through all the exclusions, but the one we will talk about is that clarification about events that occur off transit property where affected persons, vehicles, or objects come to rest on transit property after the event. So these are no longer collected. So an example of this might be a car, regular private automobile, hits a person on the city street and throws the person onto the rail right-of-way, rail tracks, or onto a bus stop, if you will. That would not be reportable. If an individual's injured in an assault off transit property, and then they come to the transit station seeking assistance, that too would not be reportable. They were not injured while on transit property. Let's take a list of, we're going to look at a list of the thresholds first, so I'm just going to kind of go through the list first, and then we're going to talk about in each threshold in more detail. So the first threshold, and these are all independent thresholds. Please don't lump them together as a threshold. They're all independent thresholds. So a fatality, including suicides, is your first threshold. One or more persons immediately transported for medical attention. That's the very definition of an injury. Property damage equal to or exceeding $25,000. Evacuations of a transit facility or vehicle for life safety reasons are automatically reportable regardless of any other threshold. This includes both transit-directed or customer self-evacuations. A collision involving a transit roadway vehicle where either the transit vehicle or the non-transit vehicle are towed away from the scene regardless of the severity of damage. We're going to go through a few types of events that are and are not reportable. For first example, is these are all events that are not reportable to NTD. So we have OSHA events that may occur in an administrative building. These are still excluded. They've always been excluded. Medically related issues, such as we just talked about, such as seizures, heart attacks, pregnancies, flu, etc., are not reportable. If you have an operator that's on a break and they're injured crossing the street, this is also not reportable. Again, the employee was not on transit property when he or she was injured. Also, a transit police vehicle or a supervisor's vehicle is involved in a collision, meeting a threshold. It's not reportable, again, unless the vehicles are on transit property at the time of that collision. Other do's and don'ts. Events at bus stops, are not on transit-owned property or transit-controlled property are not reportable unless the event involves a transit vehicle or boarding or alighting a transit vehicle. Two people who are standing when a transit vehicle starts to move and fall are injured. This is reportable, and I say two because, as James mentioned, if that were one person that fell when the bus started moving, that goes on the S&S-20. But if that bus starts moving and two people or more are injured, that bumps that event up, that safety event up, to a major event. A transit vehicle at a service stop involved in a collision that meets the threshold is reportable. A person waiting at a bus stop is hit by a car is not reportable since the person was not on transit-controlled property, and the person was not boarding or alighting. Another example of not reportability is an assault or a robbery at a bus stop. Again, that's not considered transit property, that bus stop out there on city street. However, if the person was boarding or alighting at the time of the assault or robbery, then it would be reportable. So part of the definition stated involving a transit revenue vehicle. So if a deadheading or out-of-service vehicle is involved in a collision, or there's a fire in, say, a bus garage, meeting a reporting threshold, these would be reportable. Maintenance-related activities are included in reporting. And here you see a few examples of maintenance-related activities, such as a mechanic falling into the pit, resulting in a fatality, or a maintenance employee hit by a vehicle in the bus yard and is injured, would be reportable. Less severe injuries to maintenance workers are captured on the S&S-20 monthly summary report, along with non-major injuries to passengers and patrons. NTD also collects non-transit collision incidents, such as an accident in a transit parking lot that meets a threshold. So a couple of examples, again, a private vehicle collides with a pedestrian or another vehicle, requiring immediate transport away from medical scene. So this would be in, for instance, a transit parking lot. Or a private vehicle collides with transit property, such as the station or gates and things like that, resulting in total damage of $25,000 or more, or meets any other threshold. Let's look at the individual thresholds in a little bit more detail. So fatalities. A fatality is a death confirmed within 30 days of a transit-related event. This includes transit-related suicides. Please do not include deaths resulting from illnesses or natural causes or found deceased on the property, or found deceased where it's not as a result of a collision. Again, an injured person is a person that's transported away from the scene for medical attention, and I know we reiterate this a lot, but we just like to make sure that it's absolutely clear. This is a very common question that we get defining injuries. So this transported away from the scene doesn't have to be by EMS. They could be transferred by an ambulance, but it also could be by a private vehicle. A family member could come and pick them up and take them for medical attention and so forth. And you're not required to follow up to see if they actually got that medical attention once they went to the clinic or the hospital, as it were. Now, a person walking away from the scene, let's say the accident happened or the fall or whatever the case may be, happened right near a medical facility, and they say, "Oh, I'm just going to walk over there because they're, don't need to pay for the ambulance." Walking away for transport is not considered transport, so that would not be that person would not be considered injured. We do have just a general kind of rule of thumb. If a person is transported, you're going to report it somewhere, whether it's on the S&S-20 or on the S&S-40. I just want to throw in a little note here. Please note that the injury thresholds are different for rail and non-rail modes. So if you also operate rail modes for your agency, you'll certainly want to be sure to participate in the presentation on Thursday, where we cover rail mode reporting thresholds and show you the differences in the forms and so forth. A little bit further, more information, medical attention must be sought without delay. So if somebody calls you and say, "Last night I fell on your bus and I was hurt and I went to the doctor today," that's not transport from the scene, so that's not considered an injury to NTD. Same with someone, well, either the days or hours following the event. Medical attention must be administered at a location other than where the event occurred, meaning that minor first aid given at the scene is not considered injured. And again, medical attention due to illnesses should not be reported. So again, a passenger on a bus has a seizure. This is not going to be reported to NTD. Estimated property damage. Events with actual or estimated property damage equal to or exceeding $25,000 or more are reportable regardless of injury or towing or anything else. The $25,000 threshold is a single threshold, as they all are. Property damage does include damage to the transit vehicle and the non-transit vehicle. It includes damages to transit stations, bus stop signs, and shelters if applicable. The cost of non-transit property, private vehicles, buildings, fences, etc., is also included, along with the cost of clearing wreckage. NTD requires only general ballpark estimates, and you may use a variety of methods for this estimate. You can use Blue Book values, you can use actual repair amounts or insurance estimates from your agency. You can also use established standard property damage estimates for specific event types or for severity of damage. A number of agencies create a list of standardized costs that they use based on the damage that occurred. Or these, you can just estimate these on a case-by-case kind of basis. Estimated damage excludes personal property that's damaged in that collision or that event, such as laptops, cell phones. You also exclude investigation costs, medical claims, and litigation. Property damage must always be reported on the S&S-20 regardless of the amount, including zero. If the cost is confirmed as zero, it's helpful to the reporter for you to enter a statement in the event description telling us that there was no damage to any of the vehicles. Anytime we see a zero damage in a collision, we're going to question it, unless that was a collision with a person. And we still may question that because sometimes windshields are damaged or the doors may be damaged or whatever may happen, whatever happened in that collision. But if it's a collision with another automobile or a vehicle or something, we don't expect zero and we will question it. If there's a collision involving a transit roadway vehicle, which results in either the transit vehicle or the non-transit vehicle being towed, the event is automatically reportable regardless of any threshold. Now, this is limited to roadway vehicles, and therefore it excludes ferry boats and trains. For example, a transit bus and a car collide. There's no injuries. There's no fatalities. Property damage is only, let's say, $1,000, but the car is towed from the scene. The event's automatically reportable. The towaway is not based on the severity of the damage. If the roadway vehicle was towed, even if it's just for a flat tire, it's going to be automatically a reportable event. Excuse me. All evacuations for life safety are reportable, including transit-directed or customer self-evacuations. Self-evacuations are where customers vacate the property without the direction of the transit agency or other authority. Some examples of a life safety reasons are suspicious packages, bomb threats, bombing, smoke events, fire, fuel fumes, noxious odors, or a person brandishing a weapon on a transit vehicle. If a bus has a, let's say, a transmission problem or some kind of mechanical problem, and the passengers are evacuated to the sidewalk or shoulder, the transmission problem or mechanical problem would not be considered a life safety event, and therefore it is not deemed an evacuation. So that concludes going over the thresholds. Let's take a look at actually creating a report and filling out a report form. To create a major event, as James mentioned, you're going to log into the NTD program under Records. You're going to choose NTD Safety Packages. Then you're going to click on that NTD Safety Forms button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And then you're going to click on File New S&S-20. Excuse me. If you have an event to report which includes 2 or more transit modes from your agency, how would you choose it? So, for example, if you have a light rail vehicle and one of your buses are involved in a collision, you would report the event under the rail mode, the light rail mode in this case. If the event is between 2 non-rail modes, a bus and a demand response vehicle, for example, you would use the predominant use rule, which is typically based on ridership. So again, if that was a bus and a paratransit vehicle colliding, you're going to report that under the bus mode since it would have a higher ridership than your paratransit, at least in most cases I've seen. The first 2 screens of the S&S-20 reporting tool they act as a wizard. So they're there to help you determine if the event meets a reporting threshold. So screen 1 will capture the date of the event, the mode and type of service under which you're reporting, and the event type. This is a snapshot of that screen 1. You can see a list of the collision types there. Excuse me, not collision types, event types, beg your pardon. We're going to go into more detail as we go through. So the first event type is a collision. So this includes suicides or attempted suicides if there was vehicle involved in that suicide or attempted suicide. For an event to be considered a fire, there must be flame suppression. Non-fire smoke or electrical events or burning, smelling events which meet a threshold are reported under the Other Safety Events category. For an event to be considered a hazmat situation, it not only has to meet a threshold, but the situation would have required specialized cleanup, such as a hazmat team deployed. Acts of God refers to acts of nature such as hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, snowstorms, and etc. There are two categories of security events. They are system security events such as arson, bomb threats, burglary, suspicious package, vandalism, etc. Basically, these are events that affect the transit system itself. Then you also have personal security events that, such as an assault, robbery, rape, homicide, larceny, etc., that affect one or more persons. Just as with the other event types, the event must meet a threshold. Suicides and attempted suicides that are not as a result of a collision with a transit vehicle are also reported under the personal security event type option. And finally, the last event type is the kind of catch-all other safety events. These events are those that don't fit into any of the other categories but meet a reporting threshold. This might be an evacuation due to smoke or a fall resulting in a fatality. And you'll notice the asterisk down there. Now this we've talked about earlier when we were talking about the S&S-50s, and I mentioned it again a moment ago, but for coverage, remember that if there's a slip and fall and there's injuries of 2 or more people in that one event, then that's going to bump that up from the S&S-50 up to the S&S-40 other safety event category. If it does fall into another category, there could be one injury, just so you'll know. Let's say there was when somebody fell down the stairs and there was a fatality and an injury. So you're still going to report that on the other safety events, reporting the fatality, and then you would include the injury in that report as well. Okay, so after you get past setup screen 1, then you're going to see setup screen number 2. And the setup screen 2 is going to ask you a series of questions, some of which are based on the mode and type of service you're reporting. This is to determine the reportability of the event and the subforms that need to be generated for the report. So again, this is only a list, and we'll go into each into more detail a little bit later on. So first is the number of injuries or fatalities. So you just enter in the number of injuries or fatalities that you had. There's also a checkbox for neither, so if you have no injuries or fatalities, you can check that. Then it requests the total, the property damage amount. It asks you if it's less than $25,000 or more than $25,000, and then you have to enter in an amount there. And, excuse me, the next question is going to ask you if there was an evacuation. So you say yes or no accordingly there. If the event type was a collision on screen 1, then you're also going to be asked if there was a towaway, in this collision. You'll also be asked if there were transit vehicles involved in this collision, and that's going to help determine whether this is a transit collision or a non-transit collision, and we'll talk more about non-transit collisions. Okay, so this is a snapshot of setup screen 2. Okay, so as I mentioned, if you choose collision on screen 1 and screen 2, and there were transit vehicles involved in the collision, and this includes if you were reporting for purchased transportation. We've seen some reporters choose no there because it was PT operations and not their operations. But you're reporting for them, for those purchased operations. So you'll want to say yes, that transit vehicles were involved if it was, for example, a demand response purchased transportation operation you're reporting for. You would only select no to this question were transit vehicles involved if there were no transit revenue vehicle involved in the collision. Based on the selections you've made and the questions that you've answered, the system will respond accordingly. If the event is reportable as a major event, the basic information screen will be the next screen that you see. If the event's not reportable as a major event, the system will either generate a message that the event is not reportable and ask you if you'd like to continue. At this point, You could maybe change some options. Maybe you accidentally said no to the transit question, or you didn't put in the injuries in the proper box, whatever the case may be. You'll have an opportunity to update that second screen and have the system still determine if it was reportable or not. And if it's not reportable, it will let you know, though it also may say that it could be reportable on the S&S-50. Depends on the types and of the event and so on. Okay, so assuming that it is a reportable event, the next screen that you would see would be the basic information screen. The basic information screen displays the date that you already selected back on screen 1, and then you enter in the time. There's a place for you to enter in the time using, or please be sure you always use the AM and PM designations, even if you're typing in the time in a military or 24-hour clock format. Currently, the system, if you don't use AM and PM, it's going to default to midnight. So you always want to make sure you type those in. We are working to change that, but for the time being, till that changes in effect, please use your AM and PM designations. The approximate or actual location of the event is presented, the approximate address it says, so this is where you enter in either the closest location if you don't have an exact address, or preferably the exact address of where the event occurred. You also have boxes for your geographic location, your longitude and your latitude, which is required. Please use please use a minimum number of 4 decimal places. And you're permitted to enter numbers, a decimal point, and a negative symbol for your longitude, and that's it. If you don't have the coordinates in your report, some agencies collect it, some don't, you can use a variety of internet resources to get that longitude and latitude. One such resource is latlong.net, and this is an example of the latlong.net screen. Actually, it's changed a wee bit since then. I think they've updated it a little bit. But you'll notice that there's a place for you to type in, it says place name. So here's where you would type in the address, or again, if you don't have the address, the exact address, the nearest cross streets, a milepost marker, a system or a transit center name, whatever you have there, and then it will show you the latitude and longitude in the boxes, which you can actually then just copy and paste right into your report. Okay, so continuing with the basic information, the screen also captures the most important information to us, and that's the description, your narrative of this event. The description should be concise but descriptive so that your analyst can understand what has occurred, how it occurred, and should include the number and type of injuries or any fatalities. But please do not include personal data such as license numbers and their names and things like that. Here we've provided an example of a comprehensive narrative. Now I'm not going to read it to you. I'll let you read that through yourself. But this contains everything we need to know. Where it happened, how it happened, who was doing what, who was turning, was somebody stopped, how many people were injured, were they at an intersection, all of the information that we need to know. If I may ask, it's very helpful to us if you do not use such codes as like I, V, and which I'm not quite sure I even understand what that stands for, but we see that a lot in referring to a vehicle. But you know, vehicle 1 or vehicle 2 doesn't tell us which vehicle is the transit vehicle and which vehicle is the other vehicle. Not everybody uses vehicle 1 to represent the transit vehicle. So it's much more helpful to us if you'll just say bus, auto, whatever the case may be, and that way it clearly defines that information for us. This description box can hold up to 2,000 characters. Now if you do get lengthy in your description and type in more than 2,000 characters, when you go to click on the next, message is going to pop up telling you that you exceeded the size, but it doesn't tell you how much you need to reduce it by. So at that point, you're just going to have to start editing a little bit to get it back under the constraint there. Okay, the last piece of information on the basic information form is the name and phone number of someone to contact for additional information regarding the event. Now, you do not need to enter the name of the person if it's the same person that's typing in the report or entering the report, because we'll see your name when you submit it. And you don't need to enter in the person's name if they're the safety contact, because that's the other person that we would contact anyway. But if it's someone else other than that, you can certainly put the information in there. The basic information screen is also the first screen where you see the progress bar that appears across the top of your report. That bar shows you how many subsections you have to complete and your progress thus far. And again, this is a snapshot of that basic information screen. And it's kind of faint, I think, but up here you can see that progress bar. So this is showing me that I'm on the basic information, then I have an evacuation form, so on, so on, so on. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is review the collision forms, because that's the most common event that we collect. There are up to 4 screens or subforms that may appear when reporting a transit collision. They are the transit event information screen, the collision, excuse me, I'm sorry, not transit, the collision event information screen, apologize, I misspoke, the collision information screen, the transit vehicle involved information screen, and then if another vehicle was involved in that collision, then you will see the other vehicle involved information screen. Anything else after that would be to collect injuries and or fatalities. So this is a snapshot of the collision event information screen. So for all of the modes, this captures the information about the number of transit vehicles involved. The answer here would always be 1 unless 2 transit vehicles from your agency collided. The location of the event, such as a transit facility, a roadway intersection, a roadway grade crossing, a bus stop, etc. Next, you will identify what the transit vehicle collided with, such as another vehicle, a person, an animal, a fixed object, etc. And if applicable, you're going to enter the number of other non-transit vehicles that were involved in the collision. Here's a few things to keep in mind when you're reporting the collision information, or event information. Ramps, streets, highways, and freeways are reported, the location is reported as roadway, not grade crossing or intersection. Please do not use the other option and type in, highway or I-95 or whatever in that other option. Typically, we avoid other unless there's just nothing else that fits. Using other does not allow us to do any analysis. So if you've chosen other, just letting you know, you may get questioned. Just depends. I'll talk more about that in just a second. Grade crossings are locations where rail tracks and vehicular traffic intersect. That's a grade crossing. So when you've got trail tracks going across the road, that's a grade crossing. Bus or service stop is an appropriate location for your non-rail modes, your MB, your DR, your DT, your BP for your Vanpool, and so on. Parking lot entrances, exits, and driveways are not considered intersections. Instead, you would use the roadway, not grade crossing or intersection location. For the collision with a bicyclist or a pedicab or a person in a wheelchair or a skateboarder, any of these are always reported as a collision with a person. This is another place where we often see someone choose other and type in bicyclist. So you don't want to do that. Choose person. Scooters, mopeds, motorcycles, school buses, dump trucks are all reported as a collision with a motor vehicle. Collision with a transit vehicle, the transit vehicle option, is used when 2 transit vehicles from your agency collide. So again, that example of a bus and a paratransit vehicle, that's when you'd say collision with a transit vehicle. If you collide with a transit vehicle from another agency that operates in your city, you would report that as a collision with a motor vehicle. In a multiple impact collision scenario, report the collision with as the first object that was struck. For example, a bus collides with a car, and then the car hits a building. The collision with would be motor vehicle, and then you would include the damages to the building in the narrative, and you would also include the damage in the property damage estimates. Let's take a look at a few examples of how to determine how many other motor vehicles to report. So if car 1 cuts off the bus, but no contact is made, and the bus goes on to hit car 2, the number of other vehicles to report is 1, because only car number 2 had contact. Another example, car 1 hits car 2, and then car 2 goes on to hit the bus. The number of other vehicles to report is 2, this time because both car 1 and car 2 had contact with each other, and then one went on to hit the bus. Please note that this is not the total number of vehicles involved in the collision. This is only the number of non-transit vehicles that are involved. So please don't include the transit vehicle number there. As you may recall, the first question was the number of transit vehicles. Okay. As with other events, a non-transit collision must read a reporting threshold. So again, here's a couple of examples of non-transit collision. A privately owned vehicle collides with a pedestrian or with a private vehicle in a transit parking lot. A privately owned vehicle collides with an object such as a utility pole in a transit parking lot. Or a privately owned vehicle collides with the transit center itself. Sometimes they've hit the doors or gates and things like that. So all of these would be reported as a non-transit collision. The non-transit collision form appears if you report a collision that meets the threshold, but when you're asked that question on screen 2, were transit vehicles involved in this collision, you would say no. That's what generates the non-transit collision forms. Okay. Now, the collision information screen, or excuse me, that concludes the collision event information screens. Now we're going to talk about the collision information screen. So this is a snapshot of the collision information screen. See, it's a little bit longer screen. So the collision information screen captures information about the conditions at the time of the event. What was the weather at the time of the collision? Was it clear? Was it raining? Was it snowing? Etc. Under the lighting category, I want to point out one, and that's twilight. The twilight selection is used to refer to both dawn and dusk when it's not full light out, but it's not full dark either. That kind of subdued lighting, if you will. Please be sure that your lighting corroborates the AM/PM time you entered on your basic information screen. Again, this is a chance, as you all probably know, when you save your report, the whole report's submitted or shown to you so that you can review it. So this is a great time to look and make sure that your AM and PM designation got in there correctly so that your lighting will corroborate that time. If the collision occurred in a tunnel or in an indoor facility, then you would select the artificial lighting option. Please note that this selection is not used to indicate that street lights were on or that there's lights in the station. I mean, like an outdoor part of the station, like where a bus may pull up. So it's either tunnel or indoor. So here's some considerations when reporting the roadway configuration. You would select limited access highway to report an incident on the freeway. A limited access highway has access limited in some way. For example, it may not allow pedestrians or bicycles. Please be sure that the selection is consistent with the location chosen on the collision event information screen. So if you reported on the collision event information screen roadway intersection, then on your collision event information screen, collision information screen, you would select, be sure to select intersection or grade crossing for the roadway configuration. If you choose roadway intersection or grade crossing, as we just mentioned on this form, the system will generate two subsections, one for the intersection control and one for the grade crossing control options. The first option is the grade crossing control device. Now, if the event occurred at a grade crossing, which means you would have chosen grade crossing on location, on your location option, then you would choose the signage or signaling present at that crossing. There is an option for no control device if there was no sign or device. However, if it did not occur at a grade crossing, you want to be sure to choose not applicable. The same is true for the intersection control device. So between your intersection control device and your grade crossing control device, one of them is always going to say not applicable, because it's not both. It's an intersection or it's a grade crossing. So we're going to kind of talk about this just a little bit more. And the reason we cover this so thoroughly is because this is our number one error we get in reports. And we hate to return reports to you, and I'm sure you hate to get them when we do return them to you. But this is one of the most common issues. So as you can see up on the screen here, so if the person or the reporter chose intersection or grade crossing here on the roadway information, then they would choose not applicable for their grade crossing control, and then they would choose the correct signage for their intersection, such as traffic signal that you see here. But again, one of these, this or this, is always going to be not applicable. All right, let's talk about the transit vehicle information. So that next screen would appear, wants to collect information about what the transit vehicle itself. So one of the screen will appear for each transit vehicle that's involved in the collision. So if two buses from the same transit agency, from your agency, collide, you would complete one transit vehicle information form for each bus. This form includes an identifier count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of vehicles that are involved. This is a snapshot of the transit vehicle involved information form. Let's look at each section more closely. So the first thing that's captured is the vehicle type. So is it a bus? Is it a taxi? Is it an articulated bus? There's even a selection for a non-revenue vehicle, because sometimes those are included in transit in a collision. A bus and a supervisor's vehicle collided. The vehicle action, the physical movement of the transit vehicle at the time of the collision, is included. So was it turning? Was it stopped? Was it going straight, etc.? The collision type. Now the collision type refers to the area that the transit vehicle was impacted. Where was it hit? On the front, on the side, etc. This is always reported from the viewpoint of the transit vehicle. Pretend you were looking down on it, if you will. You would also report the speed or estimated speed, actual or estimated speed of the collision at the time, of the transit vehicle at the time of the collision. You also select the transit vehicle manufacturer from a list of drop-down options, and the transit vehicle fuel type for your through a list of options. But this is not included for ferry modes. They do not collect the fuel type. And then at the last option on the screen is the question, was this vehicle towed due to disabling damage incurred as a result of the collision? So again, you're going to choose yes or no accordingly for the transit vehicle. We're going to explore a little bit more detail some of the transit vehicle action options. When a transit vehicle is moving into or out of a scheduled service stop, you want to report the action as either making a transit stop or leaving a transit stop accordingly, and report the transit vehicle speed to indicate that the vehicle was moving. So if the vehicle, and this is something we see often too, someone will say they were making a transit stop, but then they report the speed as 0. Well, if that case, then the vehicle's not moving, so you'd want to report that as stopped or as parked. So this is another area where sections of the report have to corroborate each other. So again, if the vehicle's not moving, obviously you're going to choose stopped or parked accordingly. The collision type, another thing we want to visit here. So this diagram shows you shows you most of the impact points. And again, these are reported from the point of view of the transit vehicle. Now, to me, this is one of the most important slides. This is often, again, an area where we see errors. So just note where things are on this screen. Your side impacts, of course, are anywhere along the side, not the front corner. If you have a vehicle that's hit right about here, let's say, that's not other front impact. That's a side impact. So this is the front, so it would have to be hit any place on the front to be considered a front impact. We'll talk more about these as we go through. Okay, so for instance, rear-ended means that the transit vehicle was hit in the rear by another vehicle. Rear-ending means that the transit vehicle was traveling forward and it hits the rear of another vehicle. It actually did the hitting. So please don't report that rear-ending as head-on or other front impact. Side impact, again, means that the transit vehicle was impacted anywhere on the side, including the door, the mirror, the tires, and so on, with the exception of when you have a side swipe situation going on. Other front impact is used when the front of the transit vehicle is impacted, but not when you would consider it a head-on type collision, such as in a T-bone type situation, or when you would consider it a rear-ending. An example would be the front corner bumper hits another vehicle or an object, let's say a utility pole, while it's turning. Not hitting the bumper on the side of the vehicle, but hitting the bumper on the front of the front bumper. Likewise, your other rear impact is used when the transit vehicle is impacted on the rear, but not when it be considered rear-ended. An example would be if the transit vehicle is backing up and it hit a parked car or a utility pole. Other rear impact would not be used if you want to indicate that the transit vehicle is hit near the rear. Like let's say it's hit on the back wheel well. Well, those wheels are on the side, so that would be considered a side impact, not an other rear impact. So side swipe. Side swipe is used when two vehicles are parallel to each other, going in either the same or opposite directions, and they sort of bump and scrape along the sides of each other. Both vehicles, in that case, would be reported as side swipe. Do please note that side swipe cannot be chosen as the action when you're reporting a collision with a person. So people are not considered side swiped. When reporting a T-bone or a broadside type collision, one vehicle would be reported as head-on, and the other vehicle would be reported as side impact. So in this diagram, as you see, vehicle number 1, the other vehicle, would be reported as head-on, and the transit vehicle, which is number 2, would be reported as side impact. Multiple vehicle accidents or chain reaction accidents can be a challenge to report. Remember to consider the first impact or collision type in your analysis. So in this diagram, vehicle 1 would be reported as rear-ending. It's doing the initial hitting of vehicle 2, which means that vehicle 2 was rear-ended, which then pushed number 2 into the back of number 3, which means that vehicle 3 was also rear-ended. So this is how you would report that type of chain reaction occurrence. Okay, vehicle speed, again, you want to enter either the actual or the estimated speed at the time of the collision. If the speed is unknown, you can use the posted speed for that section of the road, and if needed, adjust that speed based on traffic conditions or roadway conditions. Maybe it's wet, snowing, etc., lighting, so on. Please be sure that your estimated speed, again, corroborates your choice for the transit vehicle action. The manufacturer of the transit vehicle is also chosen, again, from a drop-down list, and there is a selection for other if your vehicle is not in the list or your manufacturer is not in the list. Excuse me. And you would also choose the vehicle fuel type from a drop-down list. And again, the last question on the screen is, was this vehicle towed due to disabling damage occurred as a result of the collision? And again, you just answer yes or no accordingly. So that covers all the categories for reporting the transit vehicle. Let's take a look at the other vehicle that was involved in the collision. So if you indicated in the collision event screen that another vehicle was involved, the other vehicle involved information screen is going to appear. This screen gathers information about the non-transit vehicle or vehicles that were involved in the collision. If one or more other vehicles involved in the collision, you'll need to complete this form for each motor vehicle that is involved. So again, for example, a transit vehicle causes a multi-car collision with 2 autos. 2 other vehicle-involved information screens will be generated, and you'll have to complete each one of them. This form also includes a vehicle count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of vehicles. And this is a sample of the other vehicle-involved information screen. So similar to the transit vehicle, it's going to collect the type of vehicle that's involved, an auto, a bus, a school bus, a charter bus, etc. And it also includes a selection for non-revenue rail vehicle maintenance vehicles. Automobile would be used for both cars and passenger vans, such as a Dodge Caravan. The action or physical movement of the other vehicle at the time of the collision is also collected. Just as when you're reporting the transit vehicle collision type, you're indicating the part of the vehicle that was hit from the point of view of this other vehicle. And basically, you're going to use that same guidance and that little graph that figure that I showed you regarding the collision types, the side swipes, other rear impact, etc. So that concludes the collision information screens that you would be presented with. So if your event included any injuries or fatalities, you'll need to complete a screen, an appropriate form, for each person that was injured in that collision, or each person deceased as a result of that event. Person type location categories are divided into 2 groups: persons outside the vehicles and persons inside a vehicle. So please be sure to choose carefully. We'll often see collision reports where the transit vehicle operated is indicated as being outside of the vehicle when the collision occurred. So obviously that would be another situation where we may return the report for clarification. Transit vehicle rider is the correct choice for passengers, including passengers that are boarding or alighting. The forms also include an attempted suicide and a trespasser checkbox on the injury form, and a suicide and trespasser checkbox on the fatality form. So please be sure to check the location and the checkboxes accordingly, and you may check both the suicide and trespasser checkboxes if needed. So this is a snapshot of the fatality form, and then the injury form. Okay, and just another note about reporting suicides or attempted suicide. if the suicide or attempted suicide involved collision with a transit vehicle, the event is reported as a collision with a person. And again, you would indicate how do we know it was a suicide? By that injury or fatality form, because on that form, that's where you're going to choose suicide if it's a fatality form, or attempted suicide if it's an injury form. However, if the suicide or attempted suicide did not involve transit collision with a transit vehicle, then you're going to report that under the other personal security event type. And actually, let me re-clarify that. You're going to choose personal security event type on screen 1. Screen 1, excuse me. And then when you actually get to that security form and you're completing it, there's an option for other. And this would be a case where you would use other and then type in attempted suicide or suicide accordingly. So this may be something that happened in the transit facility, and I'm not going to get graphic there, so I think we understand what we mean. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact any of us. Okay, so we're ready for some more questions. If they haven't already been answered by the chat box, please feel free to ask now.
Hey, Ann, so we have one question from Judy that just needs some clarification. Early on, she asked a question regarding 2 off-transit workers, and I believe that these got into a collision in the parking lot, and we weren't sure exactly where this parking lot was, if it was in an administrative building or if it was at a revenue facility. But she was wondering if that would be reportable.
Okay, I'm looking back and I see a question. Maybe this was it. It says, I don't understand why employee public parking lots at the office is considered a transit revenue facility. So let me clarify a little bit there first of all. An employee parking lot, is this the question?
Yep, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So we weren't sure that it was, you go ahead and answer the question. I think you'll be able to clarify it.
Okay. Well, an employee parking lot is not considered a revenue facility. But it is considered transit property. So yes, if a car, I'm going to go through a couple of scenarios since I'm not quite sure where we're going, but if a random car, somebody pulling into that employee parking lot, strikes a person, and that person is killed or they are injured, you're not in an administrative building right there. You're on a transit property, so you are going to report that. Public parking lots are considered, or public parking lots being a transit parking lot to park your vehicle and get on your bus, or park your vehicle and get on your train, whatever the case may be. They are considered transit revenue facilities because, and they're defined as parking lots when you'll see the forms, because that's what enables your passengers to get on or get off their vehicle. They park there so that they can get on or off your vehicle. So if it meets a reportable threshold, then it's going to be reportable. And I hope that answers your questions. If it does not, please feel free to pop in.
So then she wants to know why, for example, a payroll clerk at their office building fell at a patio and was transported, and why that's not reported.
Okay, well that's not going to be, because that's more one of those OSHA events. Those are that that you fell on the patio of the admin building. So we're not going to collect those. Just as if Judy herself, and I'm not deeming you here, if you fell down the stairs, you're a transit employee, but you fell down the stairs in your office building, that's not reportable. That's an OSHA event, so we don't collect those. So hopefully that helps.
And Judy, if you're not sure, we can speak after the presentation and try and clarify it as much as possible as well. It looks like there's a couple questions. Leslie asks, if vehicle 1 hit car 1 and 2, then hit our bus, then hit car 3 and 4, do we report location where car 1 was hit by vehicle 1?
Yes, you'd start where the collision was first transpired where it first started. So was that in the intersection or not? So on. And
All
I can
right,
see
the
Melissa
next
has a
question,
Yeah, I can
yeah,
see
the
it.
next, okay, you go ahead, Ann.
Sure, that's okay. I was just trying to save you from reading it to me. So let's say we have a death within 30 days of an accident. With HIPAA, we can't know the state of the transported person unless we see an obit or are contacted. What are the rules? Just alert you to a death occurred within 30 days. Okay, so again, this kind of depends on the circumstances, and we understand that there's HIPAA laws in place here and that you're not going to necessarily find out a lot about a person. But let's say if your bus, for example, was involved in a collision with an auto or struck a pedestrian and that person died, I'm pretty sure you're going to find out about it because I'm pretty sure there's going to be legal's going to get involved, you know, they're going to want somebody to pay for it, whatever the case may be here. So usually I think that's how an agency finds out that there's been a fatality. You know, that they're contacted. So I'm trying to think of a scenario where maybe you wouldn't find out. Well, let's go back to that transit parking lot and some person parking in the transit parking lot, you know, struck a pedestrian and then fled. Well, again, how do we find out that person got injured in the parking lot? She was transported. Probably, I would suspect, that maybe one of your patrol officers patrolling around may find out this person was fell. The person may hobble over to the transit station, because obviously it's nearby if that's a parking lot, and say, hey, this lady just knocked me down and I've got to go to my leg hurts, so on and so on. So now they know. So someone knows that this occurred, and hopefully that makes its way up as a report in the system. Let's see what else we have here. 30 days, okay. And then, whoops, I think I went too far. Okay, repeated earlier, if an agency uses two separate contractors, so does the agency consider the contract? Okay, so is the agency consider the contract for the contractor? Okay, so I think we're talking about purchase transportation operations here, and I know that some of our agencies report for 5 or 10 purchase, like they might have demand response from multiple cities around the area or towns around the area and things like that. So if one of those transit vehicles collides with another, one of those paratransit, let's say, collides with another paratransit, and you report for both of these contracted agencies, yes, that's a collision with a transit vehicle. Hopefully that answered your question, Simon. Cassidy, we do have quick reference guides. You can actually download them from the website yourself, or you can ask any one of us after the meeting to send you one. But if you're on the website, before you actually log in, as James mentioned earlier in the navigation, on the left-hand side there's a section where it says reference materials. And then from within that section, you would choose manuals. And then you would see the 2018 Safety and Security Policy Manual. And when you click on that, on the right-hand side, you'll see a place for quick reference guides, and you can print those out. Letitia, I believe the transcript is available afterwards. Lori can better answer that question as to if it's something you can download or it has to be sent. It will also, I know, at some point, and I don't know how quickly, but again, Lori can touch that, it will be posted on like a YouTube, so you can also listen to the whole, it's being recorded, so it will get posted on a site, and hopefully Lori will be able to explain where that happens.
Yes, it's NTI's YouTube site. The link is in the top of the NTI webpage. I can paste that in the chat box. It won't be available for a little while. I'm a little swamped these next 2 weeks, so it's going to be a backlog of webinars because I have to do some editing before I can post them. So hopefully within a couple of weeks.
All right, great. And if you'd send that link to us as well, that'd be great.
I'll paste it in the chat and send it to you.
Thanks so much. like there's a few more people typing.
They're thanking us. Oh, there's a question. Oh, that's directed at Letitia. Oh, thank you, Bram. I didn't even know that.
There you
Fantastic.
go.
Learn something new every day.
That makes Bram wiser.
Yeah. Do you want to come do IT for me, Bram?
Make me an offer.
I think that's actually above my pay grade, but.
I've worked with Bram for many years. He's a very, very smart man. Not saying
Okay,
everybody
Bram.
else is. All right, so Bram has a job offer, so let's see what else is going on.
Lots of things going on in this webinar.
All right. So,
Thanks, Bram.
All right, should we move on? Or
Let's see
is
if that's a question.
this the last slide? This isn't the last slide.
no, we've got
I'm sorry,
some
let me
more.
go to the last one. Oops.
Okay.
What happened? Oh, I'm sorry. I think we're at the end. I'm going crazy. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to turn this over to James now and let him finish up. Sorry, folks.
Thanks, Ann. So now we will go over the evacuation threshold in greater detail. Evacuations for life safety means there's imminent danger to all people in that environment. Reportable evacuations are also to the rail or to the rail right of way, which doesn't really relate to this non-rail presentation. Each evacuation types include both customer self-evacuations or transit or official direction. Evacuations can be part of almost any event type, but are least common in collisions. An evacuation requires all passengers and or employees to depart a transit vehicle or facility. These may be for a safety or security event. This includes events that occur off property but affect the transit system. And we'll provide an example here shortly. For example, a gas leak or fire on an adjacent property that may cause the RTA to evacuate a nearby station. Examples of what is not considered an evacuation. Examples are if a person's removed from vehicle for medical treatment. That's just an injury, not an evacuation. Removing passengers off a vehicle due to a collision. Removing passengers from vehicle to sidewalk due to a mechanical breakdown. Those are all examples of what is not an evacuation. This is a screenshot of the non-rail mode evacuation subform. The first question on the evacuation event screen is to confirm that the evacuation was for life safety or potentially unsafe conditions. Please do not answer no to the evacuation question. You will then include a brief description of the evacuation, including the cause. The what was evacuated question is used to indicate what was actually evacuated. One choice would be vehicle vessel, which would mean the bus or transit vehicle. Do not report the location of the bus or ferry at the time. And the last question asks if this was a self-evacuation. For example, a self-evacuation is when passengers get off the transit vehicle without being told to depart. Once the evacuation subform is generated in a report, it cannot be deleted. So if the evacuation is incorrectly included, the entire report would need to be deleted and a new report entered without the evacuation. Similarly, you cannot add an evacuation subform to a report. Reporting fires on the S&S-20 that meet one or more major event threshold. To be defined as a fire, the incident must have had fire suppression equipment or personnel involved to contain the fire and must meet a major event threshold. Without these thresholds, a fire requiring suppression is reported on the S&S-20 non-major summary report as explained earlier. Arson is reported on screen 1 as a system security event, not a fire. The presence of smoke, no fire, and no suppression is reported as an other safety event. A screenshot of the fire event details screen is shown here. If the fire is in or on the rail vehicle, including in the engine, wheel area, or anywhere on the outside, this would be reported as in or on vehicle. Report the type or cause of the fire. For the fuel type selection, if you chose the location of the fire as in or on vehicle, then you would report the fuel type of the vehicle. Acts of God are natural and unavoidable catastrophes that affect the transit environment. Select all locations of property damage, injuries, fatalities, and evacuations. You will be able to choose more than one option. For example, the location should indicate the property or properties that were damaged and not the geographic location, such as the name of the city. This is a screenshot of the Act of God screen. When reporting hazardous material spills, the spill must meet a reportable threshold and have caused imminent danger to life, health, or environment and required specialized cleanup. A couple of examples of what is not reportable is hazmat event. Oil, brake fluid, etc. from a transit vehicle. This is not enough fluid to meet a threshold. A bleach container carried onto a vehicle breaks open and the vehicle is evacuated due to fumes. This is reported as an other safety event because no specialized cleanup was used. This is a screenshot of the hazardous material spill screen. You report the location of the spill and the type of material spilled. There are two categories of security incidents. On screen 1, the system security or personal security events which must meet one or more of the following thresholds. System security events occur on transit property and affects the transit system as a whole. Personal security events happen to individuals on transit property or those boarding, alighting a transit vehicle. This is a screenshot of the System Security Event screen. You may notice that there is an Other System Security Event option on this form. This would be to capture security events that do not meet any other category. For example, shots fired at or objects thrown at a vehicle. This is a screenshot of the Personal Security Event screen. You will notice that there is an Other Personal Security Event option on this form as well. The other personal security event would be used to report a suicide or attempted suicide that did not involve contact with a transit vehicle, but instead is due to self-inflicted harm. If contact is made with a transit vehicle, it is reported as a collision. The forms also include an attempted suicide and a trespasser checkbox on the injury form and suicide and trespasser checkbox on the fatality form. Please be sure to select the location and the checkboxes accordingly. You may check both the suicide and trespasser boxes as needed. The final major event type is Other Safety Events. This is your miscellaneous category. These events must meet one of the following thresholds: 1 or more fatalities, 2 or more injuries, property damage of $25,000 or greater, or an evacuation. Please note, You may report an other safety event with one injury if another threshold is met. Here are some examples. An evacuation of transit property due to smoke, fumes, or noxious odors. Any fatality on transit property that is not considered a collision or suicide. Fall, electrocution, etc. 2 people thrown from their seats due to a hard brake. 3 people injured when an escalator comes to an abrupt stop. Other safety events resulting in only a single injury reported on the S&S-20 monthly summary form. This is a screenshot of the other safety event screen. So at this point, we have completed all our screens for the reportable event types. Let's review saving, submitting, and editing. At any point from the basic information screen on, the system automatically saves your report. So if you close the report without saving or submitting from this point on, these auto-save reports become pending reports, which are stored as a task on the task menu option. When you are ready to complete the report, click on the task menu option and you will see a listing of each task. Major event report tasks will appear with S&S-20 in the title. Just click on the task and the system will return you to the screen you were on when you closed the report. Complete the report and save and submit. Or if you no longer need the report, you can choose to delete instead. The system will send you an email that you have a task and will email monthly to manage the task, or it will be discarded. Save and submit options appear when you are in view form mode. If you do not see a save or submit button, click on the view form button and scroll to the bottom. Once you click on save, the report is saved. It is given an event number at the top of the report. The report will then stay open so that you can review it. When you submit a report, the report will close and return you to the dashboard. Submitting the report releases the report to the validation analyst for review and comment. It also notifies the analyst that a report has been created. Otherwise, we may never know one has been created. If we see an unsubmitted report and is past the due date, we will contact you to submit the report. Please note that unsubmitted reports are excluded from the event, injury, and fatality counts in the S&S-20 CEO Certification form. Analysts may return a report to you for questions or to make corrections. The system will send the last modified user one email for each report that is returned. After you make the correction, be sure to save and submit. When reviewing or editing your reports, it's important to learn how to move around the document. Here is a list of the available button tools, though each button may not be available on every form. One shortcut I would like to point out is the Jump To button. This button allows you to jump to a specific screen instead of using the next or back buttons. That Jump To button is how you will need to edit a report if a request is made. The View Form button shows the entire report for review and contains the Jump To buttons and the Save and Submit buttons. When you open the report, the first screen is the Setup Summary view. This screen is the only place you can edit the date of the event. Also, if your report does not include any injuries or fatalities, this screen is the only place where you can add them. Then you would click on Next, which displays your report in view form mode. At this point, you can continue to use Next to go to each screen, or you can click on one of the Jump To section buttons. This also enables the editing mode. As a reminder, Save and Submit only appear in the view form mode. A moment ago, I mentioned how to add injuries or fatalities if there are not any in the report. However, if there are injuries or fatalities in the report and you need to increase or decrease the number, you can jump to the injury or fatality section and use the add or delete persons buttons. If you choose delete person, it will delete the person you are currently viewing. Similarly, you can increase or decrease the number of transit or non-transit vehicles in a report by again jumping to the appropriate section and click on add vehicle or delete vehicle. Be sure to click on save and submit after making your changes. If you delete a report that was not requested by your analyst, please notify your safety and security analyst. Not only do we need to know why the report was deleted, it saves the analyst from trying to locate which report was deleted when our tracking sheets show a different number than the NTD screen. That concludes the presentation, and once again, we'll be here to answer any questions that you may provide. If you do not get a chance to ask your question or prefer to ask it on a one-on-one session, please feel free to contact any of us after the presentation.
We'll just wait a second to see if anyone starts typing. Oh, there. Someone's typing. We'll see if a question comes in.
Welcome, Grover.
Oh, okay. We take appreciation in addition to questions.
There a limit to how many late reports we get? Well, we don't like to get any late reports. If you're asking if there's a limit to how many you do before you get penalized, it's not necessarily the number. It's the time frame. How late are we? A day, a week, you know, we just try and be reasonable. And when we do see that things are late, as mentioned, as James mentioned, if we're 15 days late, you've already gotten 2 late notices at that point, we're going to call or email you and say, hey, it's still not here. Are there some extenuating circumstances? Maybe the person's on medical leave or whatever the case may be. So I can't really give you a finite answer on late reports, except to say that if something gets very extreme, as we've mentioned on the late reporter list, that gets to be a couple of months out. We start at 45 days, but we don't necessarily do anything at 45. But it gets to be a couple of months, 2, 3, then that's going to get bumped up to a failure to report, in which case the safety and security analyst, after we've tried you, the NTD contact the CEO, we're going to notify the Federal Transit Administration's regional office, and they will contact the CEO to find out why the reports are not being submitted. Victoria, that's pretty much right.
Oh, okay. I was answering a private chat question, so I was not sure where we left off. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so they're all talking about saving the text. We've addressed that. Oh, Robert is typing to Letitia or Victoria, I think. And was that covered? Where the saving?
I was answering Victoria's question, or she said, Victoria said, so long as we're responsive on trying to fix things, we should be okay.
Okay.
And so I was just saying yes, but outside of that, I wasn't reading about the transcript. So
Letitia, I would assume that it would go into your downloaded folder if it didn't ask, but I'm not positive on that.
Oh, I think she's asking what the name of it. Lori, do you know what the name of that transcript defaults to?
Oh, well, considering I didn't actually know that was a function that could happen, I'm going to have to say, well, you know what? Maybe I'll hit save right now, and I'll see. It says save text. And it looked like on my computer, which, you know, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know if everyone's is going to be the same. I'm on a PC. It saved it actually as transcript.txt. So I guess if you maybe run a search on your C drive or something for that
maybe
transcript,
downloads,
I think that would be.
You can
Okay.
search for
Thank you, Debbie.
files. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that was. I used to click in there and select all and copy and paste. I didn't even realize I could do that. So thank you, everyone, for that.
It's just all around training today.
Yeah, everybody's learning something. It's fantastic. Letitia, I think maybe if you save it as the text file first and then open that into Word and then print it as a PDF, maybe you could get the PDF you're looking for. Or I could always do that if you send me an email. I can get you a PDF, or I'll make one. So should we do last call for questions? And James, do you have anything you want to add while we're wrapping it up here?
No, thank you guys for listening in. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know.
Ann, anything?
I'm good, I think.
Okay. Well, in that case, I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. A special thank you to Ann, James, and Stephen for your time and your informative presentation. As a reminder, everyone will be receiving an invitation to fill out an evaluation for this event. NTI greatly appreciates your feedback, so if you could just take a minute or two and fill that out, that would be really fantastic. If you have any questions, email everybody. I put my email earlier in the chat. You can contact me there too. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.